Well, welcome to the latest video. I hope you're enjoying these and that they're useful. I know we can't meet together at the moment, but we need to find ways of encouraging each other, and hopefully I'm encouraging you with this. I'd like to say that this Good Friday it's lovely weather, and I hope you're finding time to get out and spend your half an hour or an hour or whatever it is going out for a walk. Or I've been riding my bike. It's been absolutely wonderful. Out there on the roads, there's no traffic, or very little, and the weather is just perfect. It's lovely and warm and sunny, and so that's been a blessing. So it's not all bad about this lockdown. There are some bright sides as well. It's nice spending time with the family. Although it would be very nice to see some other people in person as well. But we're doing okay, and I hope you are too. Let us know if there's anything which is a problem or an issue. You know, can we help with anything you'd like us to pray for, and we'll do that. So it's Good Friday, and Good Friday, like the lockdown, is a sad event. It's not what you'd want. And Jesus is taken away from his disciples and separated from them. And then on Easter Sunday, we remember him rising again. But today, it's all about Jesus' death and resurrection. So, wasting no more time, let's turn to John chapter 18. And I'd like to read some to you from here. John chapter 18, verse 1. When Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples across the brook Kidron, where there was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place. Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas, having procured a band of soldiers and some officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, went there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him, came forward and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" They said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. So they asked him again, "Whom do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. If you seek me, let these men go." This was to fulfill the word that he had spoken. "Of those whom you gave me, I have lost not one." Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. So Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword in its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" The first thing I'd like you to notice is how in control Jesus is in this whole situation. He could at any time stop it. He could at any time go and do something. He could just walk away. He could. They were coming to him armed with swords, and it was in the middle of the night, and he just had a few friends around him. One of whom seems to have had a sword, and the people coming to arrest him are seemingly petrified. And they asked the first time, he asked the first time, "What do you want?" And they say, "Well, we want Jesus." He says, I'm him. And he's completely in control. He's the one asking the questions, and they're the ones who are having to explain themselves to him. And it says, as soon as he said that, it says, when Jesus said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. That's not the sort of behaviour you expect from a lynch mob coming to arrest arrest you and take you away. And Jesus had to really encourage them and say, look, what are you doing here? Whom do you seek? And then at that point, Jesus says, I want you to let my friends go. And there's no question about it, they let his friends go, even though Peter draws a sword and cuts off a guy's ear. And we hear from one of the other Gospels that Jesus healed that. The detail we get from John is that it was Peter that did it. But Jesus heals this guy, and then he goes with them, having been arrested. The disciples run off into the night, and Jesus is completely in control. And we can see that again. Let's read from verse 33. Now this is the point where Jesus is in front of Pilate. So Pilate entered his headquarters again and called to Jesus and said to him, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me? Pilate answered, Am I a Jew? Your own nation and chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews, but my kingdom is not from the world. Then Pilate said to him, So you are a king? Jesus answered, You say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. And at the forefront of Jesus' mind this whole time is this purpose. I have a job to do. He understood that he had to go through this, that this is what the Father wanted, that this is the will of the Father, this was his job, this was his purpose. And he did it completely willingly. And others were part of it. They took him and they gave him an unfair trial. They arrested him at the night. They did everything wrong in terms of process and in terms of the normal things you'd expect. I mean, if you were to go to court, you'd expect for someone to listen to you, for to be able to quiz your accuser, and none of that was happening for Jesus. He was unfairly taken. He was seemingly at the mercy of these people, but he never was. He was completely in control. And Jesus refers to this again in John chapter 19. Let's read a bit more. He says what Jesus is going through, and bear in mind that he is going through this willingly and in control of the situation. Then Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. And the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came up to him saying, Hail, King of the Jews, and struck him with their hands. Pilate went out again and said to them, See, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no guilt in him. So John here is making clear that the Jews, or at least the religious leaders, they're the ones who are driving this whole thing forward, and the Roman doesn't really want to go through with it. Let's read on. So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, Behold the man. When the chief priests and the officers saw him, they cried out, Crucify him, crucify him. Pilate said to them, Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no guilt in him. The Jews answered him, We have a law, and according to that law he ought to die, because he has made himself the Son of God. When Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid. Now, Jesus did actually say that. He did actually claim to be the Son of God. And he talked about being the Son of God and saying things which made him in some ways equal to God. And want to say a little bit about equality in the Bible, and that equality in the Bible is very different to how we think of equality nowadays. So when Jesus was said that he was being equal to God, or implying that he was equal to God because he was saying that he's God's son, that is the idea of equality. That if you see Jesus, you see God. If you hear what Jesus is saying, you hear what God is saying. If you see what Jesus is doing, that's what God is doing. And it's not this equivalence of power, which is what we have today in society. Jesus only had the power which was given to him by God. That his equality with God was something that was given to him by the Father, rather than something which he took of his own right. He was always the one who did what he saw the Father doing, that he what he said, what he heard the Father saying, and in that way he was equal to God. If you met Jesus in the flesh, one day we'll go to be with him, and we'll see the truth of this. I'm sure very, very clearly. But if you were there, listening to Jesus, that was God speaking. That is true equality. True equality is one where you see one person and you know that they are exactly the same as having met someone else. So let's go on. And this is the bit I want to highlight. So Pilate enters his quarters again and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave no answer. So Pilate said to him, "You will not speak to me? Do you not know that I have authority to release you and authority to crucify you?" Then Jesus said to him, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it be given to you from above. Therefore he who delivered me over to you has the greater sin." And here Jesus is saying that God is the one who is making this happen, and that whatever authority Pilate has is just because of God. And here we have God in control. And then we get to the final bit. Let's read the crucifixion. So this is John chapter 19, starting to read verse 16. So they took Jesus, and he went out, bearing his own cross, to the place called the place of a skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. And there they crucified him with two others, one on either side, and Jesus between them. Pilate also wrote an inscription and put it on the cross. It read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Many of the Jews read this inscription, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near to the city and was written in Aramaic, in Latin, and in Greek. So the chief priests of the Jews said to the Pilate, "Do not write the King of the Jews, but rather, this man said, 'I am the King of the Jews.'" Pilate answered, "What I've written, I have written." Yeah, they killed their own king. They really did. When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his garments and divided them into 4 parts, one for each soldier, also his tunic. But the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. So they said to one another, "Let's not tear it, but cast lots for it to see whose it shall be." This was to fulfill the scripture which says, "They divided my garments among them. For my clothing they cast lots." So the soldiers did these things. But standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciples whom he loved standing nearby, this is Jesus on the cross. He's nailed to it. Apparently, if you're crucified, that every time you want to breathe, you have to lift yourself up, putting yourself on the nails, and every time you do that, the pain is just unbearable. And this is what Jesus says in that situation to his mother. Jesus said, "Woman, behold your son." And he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. And that, we believe, is John. And this is how in control Jesus was, even when he'd been tortured, he'd been flogged, he'd had a crown of thorns stuck on his head, he'd been humiliated, he'd been stripped, he'd been nailed to a cross, and he was strung up in front of his friends and his own mother. And what does he do? He says, "Mother, behold your son." And he says to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And God is in control. And I want to say this to you today, that God is in control of this situation. He is in control. He knew that this would happen since before creation. And he is in control. Don't be frightened. Don't be worried. Don't fret. See this time as a blessing. Time to spend with God. Time to listen to him. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're working hard to help with the situation, then we're praying for you, that God will strengthen you and that he will be there for you. And he is, and he loves you. And Jesus was completely in control of what was happening on the cross and at his arrest, and he went through it anyway. And God is with you today, and he loves you, and he won't let you go. So be blessed this Good Friday, and I'll have something else for you on Easter Sunday. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.